It was a promotion that came out of thin air. A wrestling show that took the independent wrestling experience, shined it up a bit, and presented it in a style familiar to anyone who grew up watching Saturday morning wrestling in the late 80s and early 90s. Though its run was short and its impact was minimal, the promotion is still missed by those that watched it almost a decade ago. This is Defunct Championship Wrestling Episode 23, the story of PPW, Paragon Pro Wrestling. It's April 2015. Kevin Owens is NXT Champion, Kurt Angle is TNA World Champion, Jay Briscoe is ROH World Champion. NXT and ROH are doing pretty well, giving the wrestling nerds an alternative. Fans were really loving it. And TNA was doing mid-2010s TNA stuff. Some of it good, some of it bad. And the independent scene from Rhode Island to Rosita was doing really well. And it's from this strong independent scene that a new promotion would hit the airwaves. On April 9th, it's announced that Paragon Pro Wrestling had reached a deal with Pop TV, and they would be holding a TV taping next month at Sam's Town in downtown Las Vegas, the Superior Vegas. The funny thing is, this company seemed to come out of nowhere. PPW didn't have years of establishing themselves in a fan base, they just kind of showed up and took things to that level. They ran some shows in late 2014 and early 2015, drawing a couple hundred people. But they certainly weren't the talk of the indie scene. Although Paragon Pro appeared to materialize out of thin air, its foundation was laid in Salem, Oregon, with promoter Jeff Manning and West Coast Wrestling Connection. By this point, WCWC had spent nearly a decade putting on shows with indie mainstays, like JD Michaels, Mike Modis, and Adam Pearce. They also featured guys working their way up the ladder, like Darren Corbin and Ethan HD. And of course, you gotta have a local vet, so enter Gentleman George Michael. Manning must have thought that WCWC had been successful enough for the next step, national television. But presenting West Coast Wrestling Connection from Adam Stevens Middle School in Salem, Oregon, does come off a little regional. It was time for a new city and a new name. In December 2014, Manning, along with Jeff Aiken, launches Paragon Pro Wrestling. They mostly set up shop at Texas Station Casino in Las Vegas on Tuesday nights, drawing about 250 fans in a 1,500-seat room. It was after this soft launch that PPW struck a deal with cable channel Pop TV. Originally a preview channel and then the TV Guide channel, the network would rebrand as Pop in January 2015. The new general programming network acquired previously failed reality shows, police procedurals, and hit sitcoms. Pop also featured some original shows like the incredible Schitt's Creek, which they eventually co-produced with CBC in Canada. The deal Jeff Manning was able to get with Pop was a time buy, which means that the show was essentially an infomercial, as the company was paying Pop TV for the time. The general belief was that they would make their money back by selling ad time and by running live events, which now had better advertising with the new show. It actually doesn't sound like a terrible idea. Pop TV was available in around 80 million homes. It's not the 92 million SmackDown had on Sci-Fi, or the 95 million Raw had on USA, or the 94 million TNA had with Spike. But shit, 80 million is a pretty wide net to sell advertising and potentially tickets to. In May, Paragon Pro held their initial TV tapings, assembling a roster of WCWC regulars like Ethan HD, Darren Corbin, and Killer Kross, West Coast indie standouts like Mikey O'Shea and Alex Hammerstone, national indie stars like Caleb Conley and Jesse Sorensen, and legends like Gangrel and Victoria. This mix of talent, I feel, really highlights what a lot of independent promotions were doing at the time. Heavy on local talents, a dash of household names, and making the show enjoyable for everyone. Paragon Pro brought a taste of what was happening across the country to a national audience. They held another taping in June where we saw the debut of Wes Briscoe. The show was set to premiere on Pop TV in June as well, but was pushed back to July 4th. The perfect time for a new promotion to enter the scene, Independence Day. What wasn't a perfect time was when they would be airing. Saturdays at 6 a.m. Part of the problem with a time buy like this is you're limited to the airtime the network is willing to part with. With originals and probably highly rated reruns, Saturdays at 6 a.m. was seemingly the best PPW could get. Paragon Pro would hold monthly tapings in Vegas, crowning various champions along the way. The Whirlwind Gentlemen Jack Manley and Remy Marcel would become the inaugural tag team champions. Darren Corbin would win the mid-card title, the American Championship. And Caleb Conley would be the first Paragon Pro heavyweight champion. In September 2015, the show's start time is pushed back later in the morning, now airing at 8 a.m., which I think is around the time I discovered the show. It was a fun way to start my weekend. By this point in the show's run, the characters and feuds are well established. Wes Briscoe gets a chance to show us what he can do as PPW heavyweight champion. Gangrel and Darren Corbin have a really fun feud over the American Championship.
I know your ultimate weakness.
Calling deep into the vampire mythology playbook.
I think Gangrel's more confused than anything at this point.
I think the hopes of holding on to the title are the ones that are going to burn down in
Oh,
flames.
come on!
Man.
And the tandem of Alex Chamberlain and Alexander Hammerstone become a dominant force in the tag division, defeating the Whirlwind Gentlemen for the tag team titles. Paragon Pro is where I first saw Hammerstone, and I was impressed right away. To this day, I think of him as a PPW guy. On November 19th, 2015, it's announced that Impact Wrestling would be joining Pop TV, airing Tuesday nights at 9 p.m. starting in January. Seemingly hours after the announcement, Paragon Pro revealed that they were leaving the network, saying in a statement, "Paragon Pro Wrestling hopes to reach more wrestling fans by expanding the networks and times of day that the program will air. As a result of this expansion, Paragon Pro Wrestling has ended its agreement with Pop TV. Their final broadcast on Pop will be Saturday, November 21st. These expanded networks included various stations across the country, like Tough TV, Fight Network, U2 America, and WADL TV in Detroit. These were all time-buy deals as well, as far as I'm aware. Now, was airing Paragon Pro a way for Pop TV to test the waters to bring in a more well-known wrestling brand like Impact? The conspiracy theorist in me says yes. But wouldn't it have made more sense to put PPW in a primetime slot to really get a feel for the audience? So maybe it was just unfortunate timing for them that Impact was also looking for a new home just as Paragon was developing an audience. PPW would add MSG Network to their list of stations in January 2016, airing Saturday mornings at 5 a.m. As a result of the agreement with MSG, Paragon Pro ended negotiations with Dish Network. The two sides have been working on a deal to bring the show to market, a Dish-exclusive channel. However, they were unable to come to an agreement. Paragon wouldn't last long on MSG, with the show leaving the network in April. All was not lost, however, as the same month they'd get another opportunity, this time with Fight TV. This seemed like a great move for the promotion. Fight TV is a hub for wrestling fans. They've got events big and small from all over the world. This move also happened not long after some new additions to the roster, like Jesse Goddard, Royce Isaacs, Anthony Greene, and D'Lo Brown. They even brought in Scorpio Sky during the Fight era. And that was a pretty big get even before AEW. Paragon Pro also used this new platform to change directions creatively. Around February 2016, former wrestler Jaleel Patel became the booker, with the show moving slightly away from being in-ring wrestling focused to a more character-focused show. Greg Romero's greaser gimmick, Anthony Greene as an annoying vlogger / wannabe social media star, Ricky Gibson's rock god gimmick, and Royce Isaacs as a bit of a modern-day Austin Idol with Christian Cole as his loudmouth vaping manager. Alex Chamberlain also gets a big singles push as the PPW heavyweight champion. Chamberlain went from being a part of a great tag team to being the guy. He became the Paragon. According to Royce Isaacs, this is when the locker room really started to gel. And you can definitely tell with the show. It starts to find itself a bit more since everyone there wanted to make the most out of the opportunity. With help from producers like D'Lo Brown, Matt Stryker, Kazarni, and others, the roster were given a lot of space to get creative with their segments. I'm sure it was a huge learning experience for these guys who weren't used to putting together TV matches and vignettes. In July 2016, Paragon Pro starts to supplement their Fight TV show with a YouTube exclusive series, Paragon On Demand. The series featured a full match that acted as a preview of sorts for what you can see on the weekly show. Obviously, each episode ends with an ad for the show on Fight, as it should. In October 2016, PPW announces that they're taking a brief hiatus from taping TV. It was no secret that the promotion's money was running out. Multiple wrestlers have mentioned that there were always hints of some mystery investors that were going to pump in some money, but like every other mystery investor we've come across in this series, they never came through. I guess the ad money coming in from Midas on East Tropicana and the constant Voodoo donut commercials wasn't quite enough. The hiatus continued into the spring of 2017, when in April the PPW Twitter account posted that they were anxious to return. Some talents were contacted about coming back, but nothing ever happened. And that was the end of Paragon Pro Wrestling. It disappeared almost as quickly as it burst onto the scene. Thankfully, many of the PPW talent found their way to Oregon to work for West Coast Wrestling Connection, which stayed in operation until March 2020 when it shut down for the pandemic and never started back up. Paragon Pro may have come and gone in the blink of an eye, but it gave fans a really fun wrestling show. It blended all these concepts that have worked for various wrestling shows over the decades, and what resulted is an enjoyable hour of pro wrestling. It's not like it was just good wrestling matches either. Paragon Pro had some really interesting stories and character arcs. A great example is Darren Corbin. His downward spiral after losing the American Championship, to his redemption, to his ultimate betrayal, and all the twists and turns along the way was so entertaining. I highly suggest watching that story specifically. I really think it could have been a bigger deal if it had a better spot on TV, or if it started on Fight TV, maybe it could have built an audience. Now you could say early TNA was presenting a glimpse at what the US independent scene was at the time, but I think even then they were obviously trying to replace WCW. Plus they were on weekly pay-per-view, not a lot of reach. You could argue Ring of Honor brought the indie scene to TV in 2009 with ROH on HDNet. They were the top independent at the time, but HDNet in 2009 was only available in 15 million homes. Again, not a big audience. Paragon Pro on Pop TV was available to 80 million homes. Even if it was a small fraction of the audience that was tuning in, it doesn't nullify that fact. But the fans that did come across Paragon still love it. The majority of the core talents from PPW made names for themselves afterwards. Caleb Conley is one of the most sought-after guys on the indies. He's someone you want on your show, a good hand. Hammerstone became the longtime centerpiece for the relaunch to MLW. Hopefully he can finally get a big spot on TV soon. Darren Corbin has found a spot in places like Freelance and First Wrestling. Royce Isaacs has found a home in New Japan, both on the main brand and Strong in the US. And Anthony Greene would become an NXT superstar and currently a mainstay for various promotions around the US and in Pro Wrestling Noah, where he's a former GHC Tag Team Champion. AG was also super helpful in research for this video, giving me a lot of info from his experience working for Paragon Pro. He described his time there as the most fun of his early career. He's someone I've been a fan of for a long time, so it was really great to get his insight. Thank you, AG. There's about 12 full Fight TV era episodes of PPW TV on the Paragon Pro YouTube channel, along with various matches and promos. So if you missed it, you can still get a sense of the promotion. Link to the channel is in the description of this video. Don't forget you can support the channel by subscribing or by following us on social media, either here or here. I'm Scott from WrestleSpective. Watch wrestling, love wrestling, thanks for watching.